I'm waiting for the other panelists. I can see only.
Once again,
we're waiting for Honorable Samson Cherargei, the Senator for Nandi, and Honorable Isaac Ruto, the Chair of Chama cha Mashinani, to join us. I can't see Barak Maluka, my friend. Barak, where are you? Frank, we have the other panelists on standby so that we can start. We are 5 minutes into the scheduled time. You know, I'm a newsman, and when it's 9 o'clock, the news has to start. There's no other way. So welcome. Yeah.
I think let's get underway.
Well, again, I think it will be good for you, Frank, to start us off by giving us just a brief of what this is about, and then I can pick it up from there and moderate the session. Is this the first webinar you are doing on this matter? I've had questions raised about this being our regular habit.
Yes, thank you, David. Thank you very much for the panelists joining us and the party officials that are also on this webinar, and a number of Kenyans that are tuned in by audio way, the discussion that is going to happen online as well. We want to thank you very much for finding time for this conversation. I want first to really extend our gratitude to our member party, NAC Kenya, under whose support in terms of thinking and structuring this conversation has been midwifed through their Secretary General, Michael Orwa, and also the leadership of the party. And also encourage the parties that I can see here, DP, KANU, and the rest that will be joining us to come forth with such conversations that are quite riveting topics that require political parties and political party leaders to engage on. And as CMD, we are glad to engage on such ideas. So on behalf of the chair of the Center for Multi-Party Democracy, Senator Abshiro, who is not in a position to join us because of her duties in the Senate, including the committee that is probing the impeachment of Kirinyaga governor. She has asked me to relay her apologies and ask that we engage in conversation, and if she finds time, she'll be able to join us. So for this conversation, we have a good panel of across party representation. Honorable Mother Karua, the chair of NAC Kenya. We have former Governor Isaac Ruto, who will be joining us, the leader of Chama cha Mashinani. We have also the senator for Nandi from Jubilee Party, who will be also joining us, Senator Cherargei. We also have the Secretary General of ANC that will be joining us. Honorable Milo Diambo is winding up her meeting, budget committee meeting in the National Assembly, and then she'll be able to join us in the course of the conversation. So over to you, David. Please guide us in this conversation, and let's see how it goes. Thank you very much, and welcome to all of you participants and the panel for finding time to join us for this conversation. Karibuni sana.
Thank you, Frank, the ED at the CMD, for those introductory remarks. I see that some of our panelists have not checked in yet, but we have on time Ms. Martha Karua, who is the chair of NARC Kenya and former presidential candidate, and all the others who have joined in who are not panelists but participating in this conversation. I want to say welcome. We will have a very exciting conversation in the next 2 hours. I want to start by, I think we latch onto the topic straight away. I see that Barak is threatening to come on. Barak, can you resize yourself properly? Enjoy the conversation. Yes.
Yes,
Barak,
here. I can hear you.
Barak, we are on, but I think your camera is twisted in a way. Can we do 90 degrees exactly?
As yours, which is badly, it should be landscaped, not portrait. But let me go with the portrait.
We are okay that way, Barak. I'm happy to see you. How are you?
You too. I'm very fine in spite of the seasons.
It's a good season, wouldn't you say that, politically?
I don't know. It is the season of anomy, and I don't know whether anomy is such a good thing.
Okay, all right. Martha Karua, Mheshimiwa, yeah, sure, I can now get you. So let's start right away. I mean, this discussion is titled Reimagining multi-party democracy for the people, trends, threats, and the future. Let's start with Honorable Martha Karua. Mheshimiwa, you've been in this field for a very long time. I mean, you've been part of the campaign for pluralism. You fought the good battle, and you've seen it all the past 29 years almost since the introduction of multipartyism. Would you say, looking back at what you and others fought for, this is the aspirations that we look forward to? Have we achieved? Are we there? And what are the problems you think in your assessment? Give us a quick assessment of the state of our democracy. I think her network is a little problematic, hanging. Honorable Martha Karua, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me? Something is not working with the internet. I've had to change the rooms and the internet, but I hope it will work. So I'm saying in interesting times, if you look at the 2010 Constitution, we should be clapping and happy that our multi-party democracy is entrenched in our Constitution. And it's also entrenched in the Political Parties Act. But because we are a country that does not follow constitutionalism and the rule of law, and by that I mean those in leadership have not accepted
I think her connection is a bit unstable. We'll probably let her fix the network. I think it's a network problem, and then she'll join us back and proceed with that, contribution. But in the meantime, I think let's ask Barak Muluka, the Secretary General of the ANC, to jump right in there. Barak, what is your assessment of the state of our democracy this far?
Thank you very much, David. Maybe let me just jump in by continuing the thought that Martha was processing. Perhaps our challenges have got very little to do with the law. We thought before 2010 that it was the law. And before that, in 2002, we were saying it was Moi and the laws. And in 1995, when this campaign for the review of the Constitution began in earnest, we thought it was the law. But we have seen that even those laws that we have, we are not willing to obey. That we seem to behave as a society that has got two sets of citizens, those for whom the law is made and those who obtain above the law. And because of that, one is witnessing a very regressive state of things where those who are in power engage in reversals and negations of all the gains that have been made over the years. There's a sense in which you even witness some kind of repeat of some of the very worst things that we have done and experienced in the past. That if you look at the period 1964-65, you see a hegemonistic approach towards reducing the country to a minimalist approach to political institutions, where the institution of multi-party democracy is killed. And after that, there's an encroachment to other institutions of free expression, that we see that the going of multi-party democracy goes concurrently with doing away with the Senate, with the migration of senators in 1965 to the 1964-65 to the National Assembly, that you see everybody eventually being railroaded into KANU, and that even KANU itself as a party is killed. And today we are witnessing a repeat of the same, that parties, first of all, came together about 4 years ago into one giant party, and that you can see even now what we are calling cooperations, post-election coalitions and cooperation treaties. We are witnessing interference with the independent affairs of political parties by other political parties, staging of coups d'etat, and all these seeming to want to railroad everyone into some narrow space of hegemonistic nature. And it does appear to me that we may have to go through the same processes that we have gone through before, when political party hegemony narrowed down to an individual who then became an albatross that has found his authority above and beyond everyone else. And therefore, we may have to find ourselves in the trenches once again before we can enjoy multi-party democracy.
Barak, if I may just, pose a question to you. Why is this so easy to do? We have the legislative framework to enable us to have strong parties. You are the leaders of these political parties. Why is it so easy to regress in the manner you've described to that personalized, controlling, environment you're talking about?
I think it's our convoluted approach to politics and political leadership, both as leaders and as citizens, that to have a responsive and responsible leadership in politics and government, you need an enlightened and assertive citizenry, and a citizenry that does not easily do the sort of things that we are doing. As leaders and as citizens, we have allowed ourselves to be railroaded into what one may even want to call ethnic spaces. For us to be honest with ourselves, we must accept the ethnicization of our politics and the ethnicization of the political party itself. I think that kind of candor is obligatory if we have got to get out of that space. And therefore, you have got an ethnic fodder, canon fodder community that feeds the political machinery, and that is at all times worried that our power is about to be taken away, or that it is our turn now to get into power, and that therefore closes its eyes to some of the vilest goings on. Right from 1964-65, when Jaramogi Oginga Odinga was saying not yet Uhuru, there were people who were saying, look, this man from the lake wants to take away our stuff. And there were people from the lake who were saying, look, let us follow our leader here so that we can also enjoy these things. And this communalization of politics and political leadership becomes a fundamental part of our problem. We must get to a situation where we have got an informed and assertive citizenry that thinks beyond and outside the ethnic box.
Okay, all right. I see Honorable Isaac Ruto making an entry there. We'll see the conversation. But, you know, I'll leave it there, Barak. I'll come back to you later. I think let me get back to Honorable Martha Karua. We were, you know, dissecting the state of democracy and drawing back to the aspirations of those who fought gallantly for this freedom and this state of governance. And we have seen the current events seeming to, you know, basically take us back to the very situation that we were in those 28 years ago. Barak seems to say that there is a problem with the citizenry. Do you think really it is a problem with the citizenry that we are in this situation? Or is the problem of the leaders who are in place and who ought to resist and actually take the lead in ensuring that they safeguard our democracy?
It is both, David. Firstly, and I hope your guest settles soon so that
let's give him 2 minutes, Martha, so that he can settle.
Yeah. Looks like all is quiet. May I?
No, let him sit. Let him be seated.
Okay.
Is there a way of establishing that connection without disruption?
David, can you mute him for a while? Mute him for a while.
I think so. Thank you for that guidance there. Okay, all right. Handle it from there, Frank. All right, Martha Karua, please proceed.
Okay, I was saying the problem is with both the leadership and the citizenry. With the leadership, because while they say that they are following the law and the constitution, they merely pay lip service. And when I talk about the leadership, I'm talking of the leadership of the country and the leadership of political parties, which is where we belong. You will find that a majority of parties do not follow their own constitutions in decision. And it's the same with the country. You find that the decision making is being made by the top leader. A person will even dare tell you what they want or they don't want. Whereas leadership in a structure that is a going concern, that is an organization, leadership is corporate, not individual. You can be the first among equals, but in a political party, as the national leader, the overall leader, your decisions and whatever decisions you come to as a party you must be able to market your ideas to a national executive who will either buy it with or without modification. And for some decisions, you have to go to the National Governing Council and the National Delegates Conference. Now, our parties are not famous for making decisions following the laid down structures. most parties are going with what the top leadership wants, not what is necessarily passed. And in the last few weeks, we have been treated to the spectacle of parliamentary group meetings where even the members who come out tell us that they are doing what the leader has decided. That is now leads me to the issue that the citizenry, we are also to blame. If you are a member of NAC Kenya, and I as the leader of NAC Kenya rule by decree, you should refer me to the party constitution and tell me that my decision is null and void if not democratically arrived at as provided for in the party constitution. If you are a member of government, you can quietly, we are not asking you to come out and demonstrate, but you can quietly point out to your fellow colleagues, to your leadership, that this is not the way it should be done, that there is something we are missing. We have gone to the extent where now Parliament is neutered by the executive. Mr. Makari, do we still need time to settle? Because I can hear conversation.
I think that, Frank, if you can assist us behind in the back room to discuss with the Honorable Isaac Ruto so that they come on when they are ready, so that they don't continue disrupting as he tries to settle in. Sorry about that.
That's okay. So I'm saying that it's a participatory approach. We as members of political parties and as leaders must follow our party constitutions, our rules, and if we have internal democracy within our political parties, then we will in turn export that internal democracy to the leadership of the country. I keep saying that a government is as good as the political party that forms it. If a political party is disorganized, if it has no democracy internally, those are the features that they are going to take to the national leadership. Therefore, as Kenyans, as members of political parties, we must endeavor to democratize and institutionalize our political parties. Make sure that they obey not only our constitutions, but the Political Parties Act and the country's constitution. Only then can we nurture the democracy that we would want to see in our country, because a good political party, a democratic one, an institutionalized one, will take institutionalized decision-making to the leadership of the country. And here I want to talk to our elite. You will find that most parties have, the elite in the parties are just the group that is seeking leadership. The average professional business person will tell you they are apolitical, they do not want to belong to political parties. This is the group who, if they form a critical mass in any one political party, they'll be able not only to contribute to policy, they will also be able to fund the party, and they will be able to force accountability on the leadership of the party. This is a call to fellow Kenyans that unless in critical numbers, we have the elite, the professionals, the business people joining political parties and shaping them, we will not be able to shape the leadership of our country to be what we deserve. If you look at the developed democracies, this is what happens. Parties are funded by the membership, which means that the membership is mixed. But in Kenya, the membership is those at the very bottom and a few elite who are seeking positions. So to that extent, I would say both the leadership and the citizenry are to blame. but the leadership has more blame because they have taken an oath. As party leaders, they have told their members that they will obey by the constitution that forms that party. They have taken an oath in the country to obey the constitution. Yeah.
Yes, I get what you're saying. I mean, leadership, the blame here seems to fall on both the leaders and the electorate, or Mwananchi generally.
Yeah.
But we clearly know that Mwananchi has very little recourse in some of the developments happening within the parties, because first of all, there is no evidence that Mwananchi is being consulted about the directions that the parties are taking, some of the parties. So do you think there is a deficiency in law, in legislation that perhaps needs to be reinforced? Or are we electing vulnerable, susceptible, manipulable leaders who, when they get into position, elective positions, they are basically sycophants of the leaders of the parties and therefore cannot hold ground for the citizen who can speak?
I think I started by saying that, or rather ended by saying that we need a critical mass of the elite within political parties.
Right.
Majority of our members are people who are struggling with bread and butter issues. Those are majority of members of any political parties.
That's right.
Those people, they know that their voices deserve to be heard, but their most immediate concern is how they'll get the meal for the day, because they are living hand to mouth. So they may not be able to devote their energies in holding the leadership to account. So without a critical mass of the middle class, that is the elite, the business people, the professionals, it is not possible in our context for political party leaders to be held to account. Okay. That is why the bulk of the membership is content with handouts, because they're dealing with hand-to-mouth survival. But if we have people who are not looking for that handout, who can be critical thinkers to bring in policy, to contribute to fund the party, and to hold the leadership to account, it will be a game changer. But even the few of us who are within the parties, the members elected to parliament, I will tell them, know your law, know your constitution, the constitution of the party, know the Political Parties Act, and know your constitution. The constitution, Article 103 in particular, gives a member of parliament freedom, unfettered freedom of speech in debate in parliament. You can use the platform of parliament to say anything under the sun without consequences, so long as it's within the standing orders. You can challenge your leadership, and you can also outside parliament challenge the leadership on issues that are not party policy. Your leader cannot choose for you, especially if you have a context within your political party. Your leaders cannot choose for you whom you are going to support in an election if they both belong to your party. You have freedom to choose. Your leadership cannot choose for you whether to like BBI or not, because BBI is not about party policy. But you can be de-whipped for failing to support party policy in and out of parliament. You can be de-whipped for supporting another political party unless if it's in coalition with yours, but you cannot legitimately be de-whipped for supporting another member of your party. So if people are conscious of what they are doing, they'll be able to challenge their parties in the political parties tribunal, in parliament, and also by gaining a critical mass. It will be very sad if we as Kenyans kill the democracy, if we kill the constitution that took us 20 years to build, and then we would have to start from scratch.
All right. Thank you. I'll get back to you, Mheshimiwa. Let me go back to Barak. I see the Honorable Isaac Ruto is now on, but we can't see his face. Mheshimiwa, inuka kidogo ama usimame tukuone. You are sunk behind there, and I wanted to come. Yes. Karibu Mheshimiwa. Happy to see you. Can somebody unmute him? I can't hear you. Can we?
I have unmuted myself.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much.
Are you hearing me?
We can hear you now.
All right. And you can see me too?
And I can also see you, sufficient for the purposes.
Yes.
Yeah, I will
All right.
get back to you just in a short while, but I hope you've heard what the Honorable Martha Karua said with regard to the strength of leaders and the critical mass required to hold things together. I want to go back to Barak a little, then I'll come back to you. Barak, the question to you is that we've listened to what the Honorable Martha Karua said, and she's not had the turmoil that we have witnessed in your party. We'll get practical here. When I was raising the question about who is to take the blame for the state of our democracy, especially within parties, and the failure of checks and balances within these parties in enforcing strong parties. Yours has had quite a fair share of this. Members seem to be, all over the place, and the problem seems to be that they have freedom to associate. So is freedom of association, as we are practicing it today, undermining the strength and stability of political parties?
Thank you once again, David. First, freedom of association is a sacrosanct natural right. It's a God-given right, and it is protected in our constitution. And therefore, we cannot penalize or punish people for feeling free to associate with other people, associate with other ideas. But I do think that ideas that it lead to the position of the party need to be processed within political parties. And political parties, as constituted in the country today, certainly ANC, have got organs through which thoughts and ideas are processed before finally the party position is reached. What we are witnessing in the country today is a situation, and I'm sure Mheshimiwa Isaac Ruto will be slightly less turbulent so that we participate in this very important discussion with a minimum of disruption because it disrupts the flow of the thought. What we are witnessing today is a situation in which an individual wakes up in from his bedroom, and he has got a certain direction that he would like the party and the country to go. And that position is assumed to be the position of the party. And you are seeing for the first time a very dangerous trend of people being whipped from State House. Even in the very lowest of the infamous KANU moments, I do not remember any day when Presidents Jomo Kenyatta and Daniel Arap Moi whipped members of parliament from State House. And I ought to remember because I now flatter myself with the belief that I belong to the country's institutional memory. That said and done, it is also true that the competitive space within the body politic has run dry of ideas that it could position before the public and try to endear itself to the citizenry for purposes of competition, for acquiring and exercising state power. To the extent that what we are witnessing today, certainly in the case of ANC, is interference by external competitors who then have quislings within the party. We saw the other day that a member of parliament in ANC was telling the country that members of another party, top leaders from another party, are calling him and sending choppers to bring him to Nairobi so that he can institute a coup within ANC, basically because ANC has refused to be part of the migration that we are now seeing into other spaces. And one respects the right of those who have moved into those spaces because they have considered the merits and merits of doing so, and they have found it meritorious to get into cooperation or to get into post-election coalitions. That is part and parcel of the freedom of association that we talk about. But within ANC, we have seen that right from 2018, there have been sponsored quislings whose role is to destabilize the party so that you do not have the opportunity to sharpen your thoughts, to sharpen your activities, and you spend all your time firefighting. Why has it been difficult to deal with those people? We come from a dispensation where the political party, particularly in the one-party days, was extremely draconian to the extent that we gave ourselves laws that make it difficult for parties to deal with errant or delinquent members. In the past, we had the Kanu Disciplinary Committee, for example, where members of parliament and other leaders would leave the disciplinary committee crying. And because of that, we put in place a very elaborate mechanism which assumed that people would be responsible, and that if you are disagreeing on a matter of principle, things that can be accommodated. But now you find that the process of dealing with errant members is extremely punitive. It drags and goes on and on forever. And that also encourages some level of impunity, not to mention the fact, without fear of contradiction, that we have got a felonious political parties dispute tribunal that throws overboard any reasoned considerations that are taken before it. I don't know whether it is because it is largely constituted by lay persons, and even lay persons. There's such a thing as very basic logic in natural justice, which you can look at and determine matters the right.
All right, Barak, I just want to, I know you, all right, a question, sorry. I'll pick up from where you were saying, Barak.
Yes.
The question is, are you saying the disciplinary mechanisms provided in law, and which are of course pursuant to the Political Parties Act, are too tedious, convoluted, and therefore parties are going to find it difficult to maintain discipline using that? In a nutshell, before, and I want this question also responded to by Honorable Martha Karua. Take no more than a minute.
They need not tire us, they need not be tedious, but they are flouted with impunity, because the first port of call in any contestation is the internal dispute resolution mechanism. And if you feel that that has failed, then you move to the political parties dispute tribunal. But even if things don't work out there, you'll go to the High Court and to the Court of Appeal, and you could go all the way to the Supreme Court. It could take forever before things are resolved. But we are also seeing shortcuts. We are seeing people rushing to the political parties dispute tribunal before the internal dispute or contestation mechanisms as provided for in the Political Parties Act have been even attempted. No approach is made at all.
Okay. All right. Martha Karua, I would like to chip in. Then I can see Isaac Ruto is back. I'm coming right to you.
Let me unmute. Yes, I'm unmuted. I can say that the process is not really tedious, because you first try the internal mechanism, disciplinary mechanism, and anybody aggrieved goes to the political parties tribunal. And previously we've had very good tribunals. I remember that in 2010, 2011, we disciplined some of our members in NAC Kenya, and we expelled one, who is now the Nairobi governor. He went to court, not to the political parties tribunal, and the court entertained the suit and granted an injunction. So sometimes our courts also behave in a manner that undermines the institutions and the law. because he ought to have gone to the political parties tribunal and then to court. After getting the injunction, he never bothered with the case, and that's how he was able to finish the term. Parties must discipline errant members, but they must follow the constitution when doing so. You cannot discipline a member merely because they have differed. You have differed with them in an opinion. It must be,
Right.
for us, it was a member associating with members, associating and promoting another political party other than NARC Kenya. That provision is still there in our constitution today. If you support another political party other than the one that took you to parliament, and if that party is not in a coalition with yours, then you can lose your seat. Parties must continue to enforce discipline, but they must do so fairly, not kangaroo courts. And the courts must also follow the law and stop taking political parties in circles. NARC Kenya has obtained a judgment against the registrar of political parties in the tribunal more than 3 times, asking them to pay us our money, which they wrongfully paid to PNU. That judgment is 3 years old. Our money has never been paid. So we again start with a country where institutions do not agree to have their power limited by the constitution and the law. And these are some of the things affecting political parties. Why would a competing party meddle with the internal matters of another political party? Why, in a matter that is so obvious, would the registrar of political parties listen to a group that looks to be coming from outside? The reason is simple. The office of the registrar of political parties has been kept in an interim or acting capacity since its inception in 2008. Even now, the registrar who is there is acting. It is now they have advertised. That office has been undermined constantly. And the result is what we are seeing within political parties. I think we need to discuss and agree as parties, how are we going to help the situation? Is somebody trying to abolish multipartism through the back door? Can we agree to go back there? This is the question, ladies and gentlemen, we must answer.
Thank you, Mheshimiwa. Honorable former Governor of Bomet, Isaac Ruto, and leader of the Chama cha Mashinani, you may contribute to that conversation around limiting the process of party discipline. I mean, for example, should there be a restriction on how far you can pursue appeals arising from decisions of the tribunal? Should the High Court, for example, be the end of any such pursuit? Should there be a limited period within which party dispute should be settled, so that people don't go and stretch all the way up to the Supreme Court and it takes 5 years and the health of the political party is undermined? I'd like you to answer to that a little before I put some further questions to you.
Okay, thank you very much, and I must apologize for being a little bit late. I wonder whether you are getting me right.
You're a bit low, maybe the volume.
The volume? All right, fine. As I work on that, I think, may I start from where I first had Mother mention and try to see solutions outside the history that we expect. Much as I agree that we need to develop political parties by involving our professionals, etc., and others, I would like us to understand, first of all, that before we can attract reasonable support, political parties must have very clear manifestos, very clear ideologies, and a record of sticking to that particular ideology, so that members in the intelligentsia group, members in the private enterprise can know where to hit on. And meanwhile, our political parties are still in the nascent stages because of the
the assignment of support, political party funding, has been very unclear. And in most situations, it goes only to the mega political party. And as soon as another grouping of political parties enter parliament, they also change the law so that political parties are funded to their advantage. But the rest of the political parties who are not necessarily within parliament do not get a hearing, and they end up getting that. Remember, and I'm sure another way, when we are doing this,
Mheshimiwa, I think you need to unmute yourself. Have you unmuted yourself? You're very low. We can hardly hear you.
Okay.
Are you hearing me now?
Yeah, that's better.
That's better. You can add the volume if need arises. Can you?
Now you are okay now.
Are
You're
you
okay. You're on mute, yes.
I'm real okay.
Yes, you're okay.
Okay, fine. Thank you. So I was saying that we need to ensure that the laws governing political party funding and the political parties' registrar's office cannot be tampered with by. Is there any problem again?
No, you are fine. You're fine.
Are you hearing me?
You are fine,
okay?
Mheshimiwa. Yes.
Okay, fine. Then thank you. I am saying that the powers that are at any given time should not be allowed to play around with the funding of the political parties, and should not be allowed to play around with the office of the political parties, the registrar, who is supposed to manage the various affairs of the parties. And also we need to strengthen the tribunal. And I don't think the tribunal should have necessarily, after that, have another court really superintending over them. We know how those courts behave, and we know how long it takes them to sort out matters. And they can take as long as Mother Karua is saying. Somebody would stay in parliament forever, even after disobeying their political parties. And much as I agree that political parties sometimes may look like they are going in excess, I tend to think that Kenyans are not aware that political parties have powers of de-whipping. Because if you choose to be a member of NAK Kenya, you must have understood what NAK Kenya stands for. If you are in Mashinani, you must understand what Mashinani stands for. And unless that particular political party sign either a coalition or an agreement with another party to work together, you are bound to work within the parameters, within the orbit that is allowable within that particular political party. But that cannot be used to muzzle independence of thought. Independence of thought is essential. And I think in parliament, we used to exercise fairly within that latitude. But there has to be a limit to how far you can go in disagreeing with your party. I think a lot of this debate is also arising when you start hearing there is a lot of changes sometimes in committees. It's not understood outside that committees are basically political party caucuses within parliament in which they operate. And also such positions are also held on behalf of the mother party. For example, leader of the majority must of necessity represent the government in power. He has got no option really. That is where he is doing. He's doing it on behalf of that executive. But once in parliament, other members are free. But a lot of these things are not clearly understood. I think they are coming up to the fore only now.
Mheshimiwa, is it lack of understanding, or is it the strong arm tactics of the party leadership that is interfering with the independence and freedom of the members of parliament to make conscionable decisions?
No. Listen, for example, look at how the leader of majority, for example, in the Senate was carrying about his affairs. At least the one in parliament has not been as outward as the one who was in the Senate. You could hear him obviously every weekend lambasting his own party leader and his own the government that he's supposed to be representing at the Senate. You could hardly understand whether that was still the government position or it was his own. And if you accept to be a leader of majority or a leader of minority on behalf of a clear minority party that is leading the opposition, you must stay within those parameters. You don't have the luxury of a backbencher. A backbencher has a lot of latitude, a fair latitude.
Agreed.
But the rest can't have the same.
All right. I would like to move on. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Maybe you can tie your thoughts there before I ask you the next question, because I wanted to move on to something else you've done lately.
Okay. Yeah, I will do.
Okay, all right. Now let me just, because I think I've interfered with your stream of thought. But we are talking about strong political parties and parties belonging in their spaces. So that if you won an election, you are in office. If you didn't win an election, you are outside. Because if we don't respect those spaces, then we actually mutilate the whole idea of political competition. You have recently entered a coalition, or is it you'll explain to us, is it a cooperation or coalition agreement with the Jubilee Party? Some people look at this and say this is part of the problem, that people are trying to be part of the game to join the winning team instead of holding to their position, therefore providing their constitutional position as opposition. What is your response?
My response to that is really clear. Political parties are formed to participate in governance, first of all in elections, with the sole purpose of winning power. And if indeed they don't win power, there is the other option of forming coalition with other parties. There is also the option of cooperating with another party. There is another option again of simply canvassing or along the corridors, ensuring that you sell your positions to individual members of parliament to pass a certain point. It's lobbying. Lobbying is also allowed, because the end result is, can you get your ideas across? Now, in a situation like ours, where we are discussing, we are even discussing the question of constitutional making, we really can't be absent from that scenario. Now, I would like also us to look at some of the mistakes we made when we were doing the constitution. We did not quite do an excellent job, and we disagreed on this with Mother Karua quite fervently as to whether the leader of the opposition should not be in parliament. For example, you vie for a presidential seat, you could still vie for a parliamentary seat as well, so that you can lead your party from inside the parliament. You can't continue and expect to perpetuate a situation where the leader of the opposition is outside and trying to drive his bus, and Ashika steering, and is outside the bus. How will that bus move? He will of necessity either be swallowed by other interests, or something will happen to his party. It will be stolen while he's outside, and he will simply be groaning and really cursing. But there's little he can do. I would like us to bring back opposition leaders to parliament, because that situation, you end up killing viable options to the existing status quo. For example, you wouldn't have serious presidential contenders in future if we continue the way we are doing, because all of them will be outside parliament. And I've always insisted, whenever I meet Mother Karua, that look, we have got to own up to this mistake we made. I tried to have it corrected that time, but they kept on blaming me that maybe I wanted William Ruto to come in so that he vies for both and then still contest the presidency. And at that time, he has never contested, and that was one of the reasons some of my colleagues in Naivasha was saying. The point I'm putting across is, let us relook at how we are going to build future leaders.
All right, I agree sorry, not agree, but I would like to switch that to Martha Karua and see this contest you had off the record. Now, what would be her response at this point?
I think Isaac is not quite accurate. He couldn't have been telling us of William Ruto because William Ruto himself was a member of the Constitutional Committee and was in Naivasha with us. If I remember very well, when we had a stalemate, it is I and William Ruto who made a total of 5 consents and then took them to the plenary and broke whatever stalemate we had. But it is true what Isaac is saying, that we argued about whether anyone can vie for 2 seats, because we agreed if you are vying for president, then you must not vie for parliament or for any other seat. And the reason is that you do not want a constituency represented by a president, the way Gatondo, Odaya, and Baringo were the days of those presidents. We wanted everyone to concentrate on their job. Maybe the disconnect, because we borrowed the presidential system from the US, how they manage not to throw away their people is that the Senate elections are held at a different time than the presidential. The House of Representatives a different time. So a senator who vies for president and loses or doesn't complete the journey is able to later on, when the Senate elections come, to vie for their seats. That's why we had the late Senator John McCain still in Parliament. That's why right now Bernie Sanders is still in the Senate, or Elizabeth Warren, or all the others. So I do not agree that any one person should vie for more than one position. Right. But it's something we could revisit, but not now. That is not the problem. Let me say categorically that if it is ODM, although Right Honorable Raila Odinga is out of Parliament, the Honorable Bandi is the leader of minority, and nothing stops him from performing his duties at that level. It may be a blessing in disguise that we groom other leaders and we get more national leaders from whom? The menu that we can choose from. I do not regret being out. I try to get in. If I am not successful, I want Kenya to be democratic and to respect human rights, so that as I stay outside like I am now, I lead the sort of life I would want to lead and I feel protected. That is what we must fight for.
All right, thank you, Mheshimiwa Martha. But I'll like just, Barak, I'm coming to you for your input on that particular contentious issue. Isn't there a middle ground, a compromise? And this I'm putting to Honorable Ruto, where you can say, because you mentioned that, you know, the opposition leaders should be in the House, whatever level that means. They would have to escalate that all the way to the counties. And then what would be the limit of such provision? Would you mean that all the presidential candidates, for example, because the parties will be represented in the House, would therefore have to also qualify? Or are you saying the runner-up in the presidential race would then qualify to sit because they would be then the official opposition in the House? And two, which is very related to this, and it's coming in the constitutional, the proposals in the BBI, is to have, again, cabinet secretaries appointed from the same members of parliament, holding 2 responsibilities that Honorable Martha has just addressed, which to me looks, again, driving backwards rather than forwards.
Hello, I'm not getting you myself. I don't know what's happening.
I'm putting it back to you that, can you hear me now?
Are we still together? You seem to be lost.
I think you unmuted yourself, or
yeah, it's
muted yourself. Can you hear me? Okay, if you can hear me, then the question is this. I was speaking off from the position
What's
that
happening?
Honorable Martha has articulated. All right, Barak, can you pick up if you're...
are you here?
Yes, I can hear you.
Are you hearing me now?
Yes.
Yes, I am of the view that if we say we exempt just the leader of the official opposition or whoever it is, then we are opening a route for nomination. According to me, and I respect Mother Karua's memory of the period, but the main contention that we had was whether we should go presidential or pure parliamentary, or we keep a hybrid system, which my senior sister would call a mongrel at that time. I don't know whether she still calls it that. But the point I'm putting across here is that the stalemate was whether we should go pure presidential, pure parliamentary, or have a hybrid. I still support a hybrid system in which members of parliament can also grow by participating in cabinet positions and getting to be known outside their constituencies. A number of the current leaders got to be known across the country because they held other positions other than that of a backbencher or a committee chair. I am of the view that other constituencies ought to have an opportunity to assess the current members of parliament or any future members of parliament with a view to picking a good candidate for the presidency. As it is right now, we are stuck with just a few who grew up in another era. And we hardly see any growing now because we are simply not giving them the correct opportunity. Cabinet.
Okay. Barak, what would be your contribution?
Can participate. I also think the concerns. Yeah.
Yes,
hello?
Yes, I can hear you much more. Bit of network issues.
You're asking me something?
No. I'm saying
yes.
I've got your point. I've got your point of view. But
yes.
something you really want to add on, I wanted Barak Muluka to chip in from the perspective of ANC, whether they hold the same position, especially with regard to the proposal for appointment of cabinet secretaries from among members of parliament. And how does that sit with us going forward, seeing as we came from that history in the past where ministers who are members of parliament became like local, chiefs with a lot of power.
First of all, I think that I'd like to make a very good comment.
The last one, the last point.
Let Shima Ruto finish up his thought on that, then we'll come to you.
Did you say conclude?
Hello, David. Are we still there?
I can hear you. I think is
Isaac seems to be having a problem. Yeah.
Network. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yes, I got into some trouble, but I can now hear you.
Yes. Okay, proceed.
Yes, I was saying that to cure one of the genuine concern which I've just had is whether a sitting president can still be a member of parliament. I think we can exempt him from constituency issues. He can relinquish that particular part, but he could still come to parliament to answer questions once in a while if it is a mixed system. I wonder whether the floor was mine or I've just come in.
No, it's okay. You can conclude.
Are we still together?
We'll go to Barak. Yes. We'll just conclude. Yeah.
Let me conclude because I seem to be the one having a difficulty with the network, and I wouldn't want to hold back the members. I can do the listening.
No, we'll get back to you once it's stable, but finish, then we'll go back to Barak.
Yes. Okay, I'm okay for now.
Right.
Hello, David. I believe I have got the floor.
That's right.
We are with your consent. First, I think we have got what I would like to call, as our people call, the hyena problem. The hyena problem is the problem of wanting to have your foot on 2 or 3 parts at the same time. And you find that it's very difficult to go on. On the one hand, we want to enjoy the arrangements of a parliamentary system. On the other hand, we still want a very powerful presidential system, mainly because the political elite leaders see themselves as becoming a president. And although they would like to see democratic dispensation or obtaining, they still are not averse to the thought that it would be good to exercise the powers of a draconian presidency. And that has made it very difficult for us to determine whether we want to go parliamentary or to remain presidential, or to have, and I agree with the Honorable Martha Karua, a mongrel system. And if we were thinking about the country rather than about individuals and the kinds of patches that they would like to occupy, we will be bold enough to say that let us go parliamentary, and that the party winning the most seats, or the threshold, reaching the threshold that has been put there, would form government, and its leader would, having won his or her seat, be the head of government. On the other hand, if the leader lost their seat in the election, that party would have somebody else in the assembly, and that person would be the leader of government. And I think that that is the kind of direction that we would like to go. But we are here in a situation where we are exceedingly obsessed with the exercise of power, the attractions of power, particularly the highest office, office of president. And you can see that we are now in the process of building this juggernaut. I don't know what the objective is. I see that my good friend Isaac Ruto is part of that process. He needs to tell us what this unity that we are hearing of all the time, people migrating from their spaces going towards Jubilee. Jubilee has got the numbers that it needs to legislate in the Senate, that it needs to legislate in the National Assembly. And the rest of the numbers that sit in the opposition or in the minority are good for democracy, because they exercise the balancing of power and control and management of responsible legislation in the House, particularly at this time when, as I said earlier on, people are being railroaded to a single opinion. And I don't agree at all with my good friend, Mheshimiwa Isaac Ruto, when he talks about the issue of Onesimus Kipchumba Murkomen, that he was not presenting the position of his party in the Senate. His party actually had no position, because the organs of his party had not assembled to process issues so that a position could be taken. That what was there was the draconian position of an individual. And when we get to a position, a place where as a country we legitimize this thing of a position being flowed down, cascaded down from State House, and it becomes the position of the party, and the leader of the majority in the Senate is supposed to come and present that position as the position of the party, then God have mercy on us, because we are sliding towards autocracy. And if particularly we get into a context where the alternative parties also develop this appetite and hunger to move themselves very quickly into the same space, because there's some kind of gravy train anxiety that we are being left out, then the country is all the worse for it. And unity itself is as good as the purpose for which people unite. In this particular context, we are witnessing unity that seems to be anti-democracy, anti the people, and that kind of unity can only be called a conspiracy.
All right, Barak. With regard to that reference of the hyena, you did not categorically state whether from your party you are saying, therefore, that you don't support the proposal that's definitely contained in the BBI to have cabinet secretaries appointed from members of parliament? In 30 seconds, would you just make clear that?
If we want that to be the situation, then so be it. Let them go and run for parliament. Let them be appointed to cabinet. Indeed, we have seen a fairly lukewarm kind of cabinet that does not even have the capacity to speak authority to speak the truth to authority, to the appointing authority. We are living in a situation where people live in a permanent state of fear, fearing that they will
be this question is not
dismissed
Barak,
tomorrow.
you have not answered the question. You have not answered the question. The question is, does your party directly, yes or no, does it support that proposal or not? Then I'll come to Martha Karua as well as Isaac.
We have not processed that question through the party organs, and therefore, if I were to give a position, it would be my position, and that is what we are supposed to hear. We are saying that issues must be processed through the party.
All right. Before I go to Honorable Martha Karua, and Isaac, I'm coming to you for a response on that. I just want to draw the members or participants to the questionnaire that is on our screen. If you could kindly fill in so that it can form part of our conversation before we conclude this webinar, which we have about 50 more minutes to do. Kindly fill that questionnaire so that we can process it as well. Back to you, Honorable Isaac. But first, let me also welcome Honorable Cherargei, the Nandi senator who was to have joined us much earlier. He has appeared and disappeared again. I think, oh, now I can see you. Mheshimiwa Karibu.
Yeah,
a bit late, but
Asante.
We are discussing
it's good to
your
party.
party.
My apologies for coming late.
All right. No, I appreciate. I was informed that you had engagements that you would finish and then you join us. We are discussing your party in parables.
Yes,
and about we will come to you shortly. But first, let me take from Isaac and then from Honorable Martha Karua with regard to that matter that is very contentious.
Okay.
Honorable Isaac, again, I can't hear you.
Honorable Isaac is muted.
Unmute.
Can I?
Yes.
Now, am I okay now? I have a mute.
Yes, now we can hear you. Yes.
You can hear me now.
Yes.
Right. I was saying that myself and Barak have been together as we grew up. Therefore, we are both part of that memory that he's talking about. The only thing I would like to observe, first of all, is that his party has no position apparently. And it would be in the same, it is in the same situation as Murkomen's party apparently, but that is not the issue. The issue here is because we are part of that institution of memory. My friend Barak is still talking the language of the symposiums in Taifa Hall, which we had in the early 80s, and has refused to also add some of the memories we have come across. For instance, around since 1992, in between elections, we have always had riots. In between elections or just after elections, we have had ethnic conflicts. We've shed blood. We've driven our country to near disasters. Actually, we nearly destroyed our country in 2007. And I'm personally persuaded by that experience to agree that after every election, why can't we develop a culture in which the competitors agree that the elections are over? Let's wait for 5 years. Let's support whoever is in power. As we grow in that direction, we ensure that schools continue. We ensure that children continue to grow, that our economy continue to grow, and that we remain a member of the Committee of Nations that assures peace for its citizens. We have had the unfortunate experience of chaos, from chaos to chaos, and marches we also have, the citizens have a right to reject flawed elections. I think it is our responsibility to move towards ensuring that we have got free and fair elections, and that immediately after those free and fair elections, our institutions are able to handle any disputes, and that the competitors come together and agree that in the interest of the nation, we must work together. We must allow whoever has won to implement his manifesto, because it is to our benefit, all of us. So it is with that background, in a nutshell, that we in Chama cha Mashinani felt we needed to cooperate and try to ensure that we strengthen devolution, that we strengthen the democratic space, that we sort out the questions around our elections, and that we also agree that it is immaterial where any president comes from. The point is, once elected, we must give him an opportunity to work, and that we can continue to lobby for our positions to be also accepted and move forward without using force. So basically, myself and Barack, we share similar views once in a while, only that I think he likes staying back a little too long and refusing to make serious decisions. But that is for our debate with Barack elsewhere.
All right.
I would like to hand over to the chair.
All right, thank you for that nice one. Now, I will not get back to that, but let me ask first Martha Karua to contribute on that matter of that duopoly of representation and being in the executive and in the legislature that we are going back to.
My problem with that proposal is that we have never truly implemented the 2010 Constitution. We now want to amend it while failing to implement it. What guarantee do we have that the amendments we put are going to be respected? My take is, let us first obey the Constitution we have total separation of powers, where Parliament acts independently, the executive is independent, and the judiciary is independent. None of those institutions is strong enough today. We need to revisit why, make sure that they operate, and I don't know why that noise, make sure that they operate optimally, and then from there proceed. Having said that, I would like to tell my brother Isaac Ruto, I have no quarrel with anybody who wishes to join government. I was offered as a person cabinet and I declined. My party was not offered formally. If it was offered, then we could have discussed it. As whether we support BBI, at the level of the national executive, we have discussed, and we have found that this is a breaking bridges initiative, not a building bridges, because it is not incorporating all Kenyans. It's incorporating just those selected by the two principals, the president and the Right Honorable Prime Minister. We are saying we do not even know what is in BBI. Therefore, our membership do not know. A few of us have downloaded, but how will it get to our members when the president promised that by January of this year, the documents would be with the masses? There are no documents for the masses, and the average person has no means of downloading the documents from the internet. Some do not even have smartphones. We therefore cannot even take that discussion from NEC to our membership because we have no basis. And if I may return to where I began, unless if we can first implement and follow the law, follow our constitution, there's no guarantee that any changes are going to be followed. Finally, I want to say this. It's all about leadership. I didn't agree with retired President Kibaki on all issues, but something about his leadership, even before we got the 2010 Constitution, as a member of DP, before 2002, I had reason to differ with him sharply. He offered me a shadow cabinet position and I rejected it publicly. He did not hound me out of DP. Thereafter, I had several disagreements with him, not on party policy, but on certain other matters. He didn't hound me out of the party. He did not hound me out of government, even when we differed in government. I did not bring it to the public, but inside the committee rooms, inside the cabinet rooms, I was free to air my opinion. So if a leader, whether of a political party or of a nation, has no deep understanding of democracy, then democracy cannot thrive. And I said I'm not talking about just leadership in terms of the executive. I'm also talking about our individual political parties and the many institutions of governance that have been entrusted to our brothers and sisters who may not seem to understand democracy. Why are we having such a terrible record on human rights when the constitution we have guarantees our human rights? These include political participation. If a group of cabinet ministers and their friends can tour Western Kenya, why can't a senator and a group of his friends tour Western Kenya, for instance? These double standards are not good for democracy. I talked against them during Moi. I talked against them during our own government, the Kibaki government, and I am talking about them during the Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta government. Let us follow the rule of law without double standards, and all will be well. And if people don't win during elections, let us examine the question of electoral justice. I think we are capable of organizing free and fair elections, like the 2002 ones, which do not lead to any street fights thereafter. Let us be fair to each other, and let us not make proposals that, if followed, can be ridiculous. With respect. Why do I say ridiculous? If you say that the runner-up must get a position, why don't you begin with the runner-up to the MCA and create a position for them? And then all the 6 seats will have runner-ups. That's an absurd situation. Let's rectify the way we conduct our elections, our political culture, and all will be well with us. And let's respect even those we differ with.
All right, thank you, Honorable Martha Karua there. Senator Jerugeri, making your maiden speech on this webinar. Your party is obviously on the spotlight, and a lot of things being said about democracy and the state of democracy. It's at 2 levels. The country having many parties and competing political institutions, as well as and freely so, as well as within the political party, the freedom of expression and ability to participate fully within the decision-making organs of your party. I saw you shaking your head in agreement when Honorable Martha Karua was reminiscing on her past with the former President Mwai Kibaki. Are you missing something? Unmute. You need to unmute.
Thank you, David, for the entire panelists, and my apologies for coming late. I was in a few commitments. Number 2, I have seen the CCM party leader, Isaac Ruto, is part of the panelists. I want to welcome him officially to Jubilee Party and wish him well in this journey. Number 2, David, I want to strongly associate myself with the comments of our sister Honorable Martha Karua on the issue of protection of democracy, because the questions that you sent us is that today what happened in Jubilee is so sad. The party leader walks in, the Secretary General talks, the party leader talks just giving direction. There is no room even for discussion and discussion of the party issues. So my worry is, what I'm missing, David, and to the entire panelists, is that the parties we have are now political party tyrannies. It's no longer about the Mwananchi issues. It is about dictatorial tendencies that we came from as a country. And it is so sad, a party like Jubilee that was supposed to bring the country together, have a vision of respect to rule of law and democracy, is degenerating as the fastest speed to become one of the monolithic parties that can be a threat to the democracy in this country. And even by the fact that they are annihilating other parties like Wiper, like CCM, like KANU, and the rest of us, is a clear indication that the interest of the common mwananchi, the interest of democracy in this country will not come to pass, because as elected leaders, David, we will now endeavor to serve the party interest as opposed as the representation interest. And I agree myself with what the Mheshimiwa Martha Karua said, that going forward, I think we are trending on a very dangerous ground, because all this, David, as I conclude, they are trying to force us in courts to toe the line for the issue of BBI, that this BBI will serve selfish, specific interest of clinging party to two individuals. It's not even about 42 plus Kenyans, million plus Kenyans. So from where I sit, the reason even I was removed as the chairperson of Justice, Legal Affairs and Human Rights in the Senate is not because I didn't deliver the government agenda. As the chair of JLAC, any government business that came to the JLAC as the chair, there is no day that it flopped at the floor of the House of the Senate. It is because of my perception that I am so close to the deputy party leader, I don't toe the line of the president, I don't respect the party leader, which is just hogwash. It does not exist. So from where I sit, I think the danger is that the ruling party, which I'm part of, is taking this country into a very dangerous trend in creating a dictatorial tendencies that we have come from a single party era.
Let me ask you this, and I'll apply this to as well to Honorable Isaac Ruto. What is the recourse of members such as yourself who find that the political party internal disputes mechanisms are not working, and therefore the party can drift gradually towards what you're calling dictatorial, one-party representation, whatever you call it? What is the recourse? Is there a deficiency in the law, or you are not exercising the mechanisms provided in the law?
David, I think the issue is we don't have a problem with Political Parties Act and the Elections Act and even the Jubilee Constitution. The Jubilee Constitution has provided for mechanisms for recourse, but there is a circumventing of the same creation of the laws that are supposed to protect political parties. And I think the bottom line or the baseline in this, David, is where a situation where the parties are still being personalized, they are still being owned by individuals. The moment we'll transform parties to become institutions, it will now create a proper avenue where I can work, because as being branded Tanga, for example, if I have a disciplinary action against, if the Jubilee Party has called me for disciplinary action, I know when I'm walking into that room, especially the nominated senators and the rest who are taken there, I already know the outcome. So in as much as the Jubilee Constitution, the Political Parties Act has provided for the recourse within the party for such, maybe when you want to challenge an issue, there is lack of internal democracy. Because I've given you an example. The president worked today in KICC, sat, there was prayers, the Secretary General talked, he invited him, he just told members, the new majority leader of the National Assembly is Amos Kimunya. He proposes, he seconds, he votes, and he declares the winner. So in short, there is no party internal democracy, or there is no proper recourse within the party, because the parties are still being owned by individuals. They are no longer institutions. So as we talk, even if those ones, they just exist in stone, they are just cast on stone, but they do not apply in reality. They do not. I remember, for example, as I finish, I can give you an example. The other day, we elected the senator for Narok to be the chairperson of PAC. The reason is that they were suspected that the members who voted for Senator Ledama were members who were Tanga members. Because of that only, the party leader of ODM called Senator Ledama Olekina and told him to surrender the PAC chairmanship, simply because the party was not comfortable with him. And you find such a person did not have a recourse. He did not know he can go, because the party leader has already decided your case. The party leader has already given judgment. So it is very hard to have a recourse within a political party unless you are the owner.
So you seem to have thrown up your hands and you have no recourse, because you say the political parties' structures, the constitution are okay, but you seem to be helpless. So when do the mechanisms kick in? I mean, maybe you shouldn't answer this. Let me ask somebody looking in from outside, the name of Honorable Isaac Ruto, to tell us what he thinks about what is going on there as you welcome him.
It's a rough ride. Are we having him?
Isaac, unmute. As usual, you unmute.
Yes, thank you very much and welcome, Cherargei. I hope he's hearing me like I heard him loud and clear.
Yeah, loud and clear.
Right. Thank you very much. Most welcome to this forum. First, I had you welcoming me to Jubilee Party. And I don't know where exactly you are in that corner because I was told when I arrived, I was told you were somewhere in Fort Asili or something Asili, something similar to that. So I don't know where that one, that particular one is as of now. But anyway, Bwana Cherargei, you have talked so well now about democracy. Are you still hearing me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Am I okay?
You. Yeah.
Okay, fine. I come from one part of the country where I have had the uncomfortable opportunity to listen to Cherargei every weekend, Cherargei and his team of Tanga Tanga. And they have never heard a single nice word about their party leader. They have been abusing him for 2 years. They have been giving him threats. They have been telling him to dictate who will become president after 2022. Like he may, you normally keep telling us he promised you somewhere where we were not, we cannot be sure where, that there will be no elections in 2022 and that he was simply supposed to announce the next president. So I'm surprised you are now talking about democracy, which you did not seem to remember for the last 2.5 years. Your own party leader kept reminding you that let us deliver on our manifesto. For 2.5 years, you refused. You had your party leader for 2.5 years telling you, let's bring other Kenyans to the same table, let's discuss. You refused that, you didn't want them. You kept saying some are this, some other. I don't want to repeat the descriptions you've given to all leaders in Kenya because I even know others you might even have thrown at Mother Karua, but she's here, so I'm not going to create any animosity with you. The point I really want us to make is that you will also do us a lot of favor if you could tell us how much democracy there is in your Tanga Tanga corner, or you simply all seem to agree on the script every weekend. Where do you get this script, and what is the great miracle that assures that what Cherargei is saying is the same thing Duale is saying, is the same thing Juma is saying, is the same thing another one is saying in Narok, it's the same thing. Where do you meet to agree on these issues? And tell us the amount of latitude you have in coming up with those specific agenda for your weekends. But I don't know what the chair had actually asked me to do.
Actually, you have done what I asked you to do, Mheshimiwa.
Yes.
No, but the point is that
nevertheless, I only want to put it across.
My point was, I think Honorable Cherargei has got to a point that they did not toe the line and they were not following the party leadership's edict on what needed to be done, and the criticism was excessive or had taken a different direction. I'll allow Honorable Cherargei to respond to that later on, a little after I've listened to Martha Karua. But also, as you speak, and then Barak, I'm coming to you because I would like to see your contribution on this matter. All the political parties sign up to the code of ethics or something like that. So it cannot be that what is happening in one party is their own business. It is we're operating within the same political environment, and we have subscribed to certain standards of our democracy. I don't know what is going on within your own parties, but let's address what is going on within the Jubilee Party and this lack of so-called consultations, lack of democracy within the institutions not being convened, and the fact that it seems like the members can have nowhere to go.
Have you asked me to come in?
Yes.
Okay. I would like to say one, that two wrongs don't make a right. And I can see Isaac has not lost his humor. He is as humorous and as good-natured as I remember. him in parliament. Now, both Tanga Tanga and Kieleweke were doing the same thing, hurling insults at each other day long and at the leadership of each faction. So I cannot myself, as someone looking from outside, say one faction was better than the other. And if the Jubilee leadership allowed for 2 years our ears to be assaulted by the unpalatable things going on in these two camps for that long, it's a failure of leadership in terms of the Jubilee Party. And they are forcing Kenya to address crisis within the Jubilee Party as a national crisis, which is shortchanging us. I want to say this. Members of Jubilee who feel oppressed, same as members of NAC Kenya or any other party, are not helpless, and certainly not a lawyer like Cherargei or a member of parliament, for that matter, an empowered person. You can follow the internal party machinery. You can go to the disputes tribunal, political parties. You can end up in court. Those of us who are able, if we do not challenge our party's internal democracy, we are letting down Kenya, and we are setting Kenya on a path where democracy will never be nurtured. If you feel anything is going wrong, challenge it within the party. Write letters, let them not be answered. And then when you reach the tribunal, you can show you wrote a letter. It is very disempowering for members who have elected you, Honorable Cherargei, and anybody else in your position to feel you resign as though you are helpless. Let us test our systems so that we can grow our democracy. When I was dissatisfied with elections, I tested our system up to the Supreme Court. I was not happy with the outcome, but at least I tested the system. I'm testing the East Africa Court of Justice. Not that I'll get the seat from East Africa, but we will be able to discuss whether Kenya follows the rule of law. When it comes to issues about elections, I'm challenging CMD to convene us as political parties. Then we can be able to talk about electoral justice. Those of us in leadership, in positions of privilege, let us not throw our hands in the air, because we are going to disempower those who follow us. And when you see turmoil in one political party, and you see the offices that are supposed to arbitrate those disputes not working well, worry for your party, because you don't know what will happen the next day. It is in our interest as parties to have a functional office of the Registrar of Political Parties, to have a functional political parties dispute resolution tribunal, to have a functional parties liaison committee, and to have a thriving democracy. Exercise your voice in parliament, knowing that the Constitution protects you from being sanctioned by your party or by anybody for things spoken in parliament. Let us all exercise the facilities given by the spaces we occupy. That would be my take.
Thank you. Barak, you've been lost for a while. Are you there? But I can see some of our participants. I'll come to you for also to render some advice on the matter of Jubilee, even though you're not a member and you don't like interference in internal parties, matters of other parties. But I think these are matters of public policy and the state of our democracy that, parties must behave according to the political, to the code of conduct of political parties. And I think there are issues emerging from what Senator Cherargei has said. Before I come to you, I just want to invite the other people who are participating on video. If you have a question or you would like to throw something to the panelists, I want to welcome you to do so. As we move on, you can signal me. And I also just want to ask the panelists to occasionally look at the scroll on the chat. There are quite a few questions which are coming in from our members who are listening, participants listening in on audio. May not be able to flash many of them because the conversation goes on, but we'll pick out some. But if you find something that addressed to you directly on the chat, please just raise it up and address it. Barak, render some wisdom on this matter.
Okay, you have not asked me a very specific question, so I'll take a shot in the dark.
I would rather you start from the point of view of what is going on within the Jubilee Party, and Senator Cherargei here has raised a lot of things, lack of consultations, and seems to be that they have thrown up their hands, that there's nothing anymore they can do. And I'm saying that all political parties are governed by the Code of Conduct of Political Parties, which is in the Political Parties Act. How come things are getting to a head and nothing can be done if somebody wants to run away with the party?
Very good, very, very good, David. And Isaac Ruto will want to remember that it is true I was with him at the University of Nairobi in the 80s. I was also privileged to have been there with Honorable Martha Karua. Martha went slightly ahead of us, and Isaac came after Martha had left, and it does appear that Martha and I, if Isaac will stop being disruptive, Isaac, yeah, you know, he came after Martha had left the University of Nairobi, but Martha and I read from the same script. Isaac read from a slightly different one, or if he read from the same script, Martha and I have remained faithful, and Isaac has strayed. He has gone into the Jubilee House, and you can see the things that he's saying. He has even forgotten that he's in the same party with the Murkomen and with the Cherargei. They are now together. You know, the chameleon and its tail cannot be two different animals. You cannot chop off the tail and say this is the chameleon and this is that. This is another entity altogether. They're one and the same thing. When Isaac tells us that we need to give the president the position to work when the elections are over, that does not include going to squeeze yourself in the same corner. And because of that kind of miscarriage of justice, which begins all the way from the electoral process, we are now witnessing something very sinister happening, not just in Jubilee, but a sinister thing that haunts the whole country. We can no longer look at what is happening in Jubilee as an internal affair where the party leader summons a whole 100 and something members to State House, as happened today to KICC, comes and, like Comrade Napoleon in George Orwell's Animal Farm, reads out an edict and then goes away. The meeting is over, and you call it a parliamentary group meeting. It cannot be. This is a autocracy, if we must call sin by its name. And we are reminded of Martin Niemöller, who said in February 1946, after the Second World War, that first they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for the Catholics, and I did not speak out because I was a Protestant. And finally, they came for me, and there was nobody left to speak. What we are seeing is the incursion and into the legislature by the judiciary, that the doctrine of separation of powers is thoroughly endangered, that legislators cannot sit in committees and decide who is going to lead which committee. The party may want to have a voice, but when that party is led by the president and that president is whipping the parliamentary group from State House, and he whips them not for them to be listened to, not to be heard, but to be handed down draconian edicts and be told within the space of 20 or so minutes that this is going to be the new arrangement in parliament. Remember, separation of powers, balance and separation of powers is that the legislature shall keep the executive in check. Now, which kind of legislature is this that is so thoroughly afraid that is going to keep the executive in check? It was even better in the one-party days when just about 5 members of parliament, my member of parliament, Martin Shikuku from Butere, Mwashengu wa Mwachofi from Undanyi, the old James Orengo, not the new one that we are seeing today, who justifies things that we can no longer understand. When we look at them and we look at him, we cannot tell the difference between him and those who have stood for the wrong things that he opposed in the past. It was better in those days that you had 3 or 4 people who could stand up in parliament and who could speak for the country. Today, everybody is watching the lips of the big men and trying as much as possible to be on the right side of things. So the Senate was captured a few weeks ago, and now the National Assembly has been captured. That is no longer a Jubilee affair. It's a matter of national concern, and this is a situation in which people like Murkomen and Cherargei and others would tell you, like Jesus Christ, that the people of Kenya do not cry for me, cry for yourselves and for your children. That is what Jesus Christ told the daughters of Jerusalem when he was going through his passion, receiving lashes and falling with the cross and carrying his cross. And the women were crying, and he told them, no, don't cry for me, cry for yourselves and for your children. So civil society needs to come back. Political parties like ours in ANC, we need to be very firm. In spite of the coups that are partly state-inspired, partly inspired by those who are trooping into Jubilee so that we can also surrender, we need to tell them that we shall not surrender. And we must now come out and protect that space, the space of freedom, and stand with our country in this hour of need.
Barak, okay, I want to put this, a question coming in from our, chat, that we are here complaining about the conduct of, say, within Jubilee, leadership and management, and how undemocratic it is appearing. But somebody asked, it's not different. All the political parties are the same. The leader, party leader, or chairman, or the founder calls the shots. And they say, Collins here says, it will not be any different in Martha Karua's NARC Kenya, or in Kalonzo Musyoka's Wiper, or in Raila Odinga's ODM. What is the difference? Would they step down? Would they hold, and including Isaac Ruto's Chama Cha Mashinani, would they step aside? Would they allow new leadership to take charge?
So certainly in Raila Odinga's ODM, we have seen it is the same thing, that conduct. We have seen them behave the same way as their partner Jubilee, and created this behemoth, which my good brother Isaac has also now joined in, and they are ready to roll the country down the cliff. If we ask about Martha Karua's NARC Kenya, or we ask about Ford Kenya and the NC, it's a hypothetical question. And you know that hypotheses have got to be tested before we can draw
but
conclusions.
The truth of the matter, Barak, the truth of the matter is that all these political parties have not held leadership elections since the last election. And of course, it's about that time. But where's the evidence they would act differently? Or where is the evidence the leaderships are any different? That is the question being posed.
May I come in?
I'm coming to, in fact, Barak, I want you to surrender that time to Martha Karua and Honorable Isaac Ruto, because they are principal chair or leaders of those parties. Just, if you will allow me.
Yeah,
I defer to you.
I would like to tell the questioner, I've forgotten the name, sorry, that NARC Kenya is different. We hold our elections on time, and we are just about due. We have 1 year to hold elections. I've already given notice that we are now grooming new leadership. I'm no longer interested to continue chairing the party, but that doesn't mean I've had enough of politics. But we have to hand over institutions to youthful leadership. And my vice chair is right here, one Kevin Kabala, a young person. My SG is on, a younger person. I'm the octogenarian. I'm not yet at the octogenarian level, but I'm the older person in the party. The other thing I would like to say, our decision-making is institutionalized. We follow our constitution to the letter. If a matter belongs to NEC, it will belong to NEC. If it's to the management committee, if it must be reported to the governing council or to the National Delegates Convention, it happens. When we have elections, our nominations must be done in a free and fair manner. Even the registrar who left, whom we did not agree with because she never paid us our money as ordered by the tribunal, would simply have told you that NAC Kenya is the best managed party as of that time. And we endeavor to continue that way. Do not assume that all parties are the same. We want to be an example that a well-managed party would run a well-managed government. Do you remember Mwai Kibaki's DP, which was called a gentleman's party because it was orderly? Do you remember when he came to government and before many, many things, that he ran a good government up to a certain point? Just to let Kenyans know, a government is as good as the political party that forms it. Check the political parties, don't assume.
All right, thank you. Thank you for that response there. I will pick some more questions, but Chama cha Mashinani, what is the status?
I'm saying.
Can I, Makali David?
Let me chip in.
I will come back to you, Cherargei, just shortly. Let the party leader of the chairman of Mashinani respond to that particular. In a nutshell, don't exceed 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. I must first of all apologize because I was off air for a large part of Bwana Mbarak's delivery. Fortunately, I'm back now because there was a power outage. Now, I want to say that it's beautiful to hear very, very good ideas from Mbarak and the very good ideas from Mother. I have also had Cherargei. Now, Cherargei, much as I cannot entirely push you to the same corner with Murkomen, because you have been a little bit measured in most of your speeches around which I've had occasion to listen to. But before the run-up to 2002, the messages you were passing to us, including when we were telling you not to dissolve political parties and bamboozle Kenyans into a single party era, the responses we got from your corner cannot give you the luxury to really explain to us about party democracy now. It was completely refused. We were in a party called URP. We only held elections up to the county level, and that was the end. And any question met with expulsions. Of course, these problems with parties exist. Barack, of course, would like us not to remember that one member of parliament has been hanging on strings because he's supposed to be expelled, and the courts have given him some reprieve. So Barack, really, I think we all have to agree, all have sinned. When you quoted Jesus Christ would at the moment have said, he who has not sinned should throw the stone. Now, I really don't know whether ANC can throw any stones in this scenario. They are not saints when it comes to management.
Yes. Out of order. I want to redirect you.
I withdraw and apologize.
I want to redirect you to the question, which is, would your party submit to the democratic ethos of elections that change leaders? Which is the question on the table. And when do you intend to do that?
Yes, in fact, we will. And in fact, if you can recall in the last elections, I ran for nomination for governor with a competitor who really stood on Chama cha Mashinani and garnered quite some votes. I'm simply saying that I was never given a nomination delivered to my desk. We had to go through a process. I'm simply saying that next year, we expect to hold our elections as Chama cha Mashinani.
Okay, all right. Let's leave it at that. I want to go to Cherargei. Mheshimiwa, the question comes. You seem to be, they say, you seem to be confusing democracy with insubordination?
Yes.
I think, thank you. One thing I wanted to clarify to, and you know, Isaac is always a very good comedian. Now, what I can say is one, Mheshimiwa Martha Karua had asked, what have you done within Jubilee that shows that you have been fighting for structures to work? You remember, David, around a month ago, we wrote to the registrar of political parties of 150 MPs, to the registrar of political parties when the party leadership through Secretary General Raphael Tuju tried to change the members of Central Management Committee. And we did succeed. The registrar of political parties, Ndiritu, referred us to the political parties tribunal. That matter is still active and it is still ongoing. You remember when Kipchumba Murkomen and Susan Kihika were moved from the House leadership, they challenged in court, and the court said that their case was premature at that point. The number three, we have also challenged even the ruling of the Speaker of the Senate, Kenneth Lusaka, that in reading the removal and of Senator Murkomen and Senator Kihika from the leadership of the House of the majority side, he was supposed to give a reason ruling. So I want to assure Mheshimiwa Martha Karua that we have done as elected leaders through the political structures and through the legal means to try and address that issue. Number two, your question is that we are confusing insubordination. There is no subordination. Let me use today's, and I can see Isaac Ruto is excited. I don't know why he's excited, because he's telling us that he's insulting the president. He should be telling me, on this particular weekend, on this function, you did insult the president, so that Kenyans can know the truth. Number two, when you talk about, for example, today, let me ask a question. As my brother Barack Muluka had said, we walk into KICC, the party leader arrives, the Secretary General stood up to speak. The meeting still only 22 minutes, which other, it's not insubordination, it's more of dictatorial tendencies, because as a party member, a ranking member of Jubilee Party, I would have been expect the party leader to say, before we conclude the meeting, before the Secretary General speaks, why don't we listen in to members who have one or two issues? That is a party we want to envisage of. The issue, and I want to warn my brother, Governor Isaac Ruto, that you should be careful not to take us to tribal political parties. Because when you complain by saying, oh, we folded up URP, you should have another in your corner somewhere, you should have another party in a corner somewhere in Kirinyaga, somewhere in Mombasa. Mheshimiwa Isaac Ruto, you are taking us to negative tribal political parties, because the main aim of political party called Jubilee was to have a party with national outlook, with the vision and the foundation of vibrant young leadership, the way Martha Karua is pushing within her party. So what I can say at this point, we have never insubordinated the political party. Let me ask David, today they removed the majority leader, Haden Duale. Has Haden Duale been delivering? Yes. Has he been pushing government agenda in the National Assembly? Yes. In the Senate, Murkomen was removed. Has he been delivering on the government agenda on the floor of the House? Yes. Has he been pushing government agenda in the floor of the House?
Senator Charalgei, I hear that your own party constitution grants the party leader such powers.
In fact, yes. I don't know which constitution that person is reading, because from my reading, any serious political party, even the little-known political party of my brother Chama Shinani, has also structures where him as the party leader.
That's
all right. Okay.
Out of order.
All right. That I will not allow the governor to respond.
Out of order.
I know what is the word used there is a little it pinches, but we are about to come to the end of this conversation. We obviously started a little late, and this conversation is very animated. It can take a longer time, but as we come to the conclusion, I want to direct you to a few things. One is the matter of the constitutional moment that the president declared on Madaraka Day. Do you feel it? Starting with Martha Karua.
I can only answer you by telling you that the constitutional moment, I feel, is a moment to accelerate the implementation of the Constitution. A Constitution that is hardly implemented I started saying the 2/3 gender rule has not been implemented. The chapter 6 on leadership and integrity, the Bill of Rights, Article 43 on socio-economic rights, basic needs, if you like. The chapter on management of public finances, devolution is yet to be fully achieved. This constitution has not been implemented, and therefore it is not a time to start cannibalizing it. It is time to rededicate ourselves to implementing it. And the only right thing BBI said is that we need a national conversation. We need a national conversation that will drive us to adhere to constitutionalism and the rule of law. We cannot, with impunity, refuse to implement what we have and convince Kenyans, hope to convince Kenyans that once you amend, you will start obeying.
Is that to say, Mheshimiwa, that if a referendum is coming and a new constitution, I mean, those constitutional changes are proposed, you are on the no side?
Completely.
All right,
As
let me
of
move
now,
to...
nobody
Okay.
has ever convinced me or given any tangible reason why, when impunity is thriving, they want more laws which they'll then again not uphold.
All right. Governor Ruto, the question comes, Jubilee and the president has not subscribed to your more than 15% allocation to the counties. And here you are joining the same Jubilee administration to help to implement their agenda. The question that naturally arises, is this out of personal selfish interest of yourself and the party, CCM, to be part of the deck? Or what is common? Or was the government and Jubilee and the administration poorer by having you outside it?
Thank you very much. Let me try to unmute myself. Or are you hearing me? Am I
Yes.
muted?
No,
Are you
we can
hearing
hear
me
you.
now?
Yes.
Okay, fine. Yeah, first of all, I want to say that I have continued to have a clear position on the issues that we did not even input in the constitution from day one. And we differed on that a lot with Mother Karwa, and earlier on in this session, she confirmed that they went out and made some agreements with William and Uhuru on what they thought should be the best constitution. Me, I have never agreed to a pure presidential system of government. And any opportunity I get to remove that imperial presidency, I will definitely participate in that process. This is an opportunity that gives us, that we now have to rectify those mistakes that we are reinventing, or we reinvented the imperial presidency in our new constitution when we last passed it. The other issue is that devolution is simply some promoted county councils. They can hardly do anything. You can even see what's happening all over in the counties. They are given 15%. We had promised Kenyans a much better devolved systems, but we didn't achieve. Throughout the period I was governor and I was chairman of Council of Governors, I kept pushing, and Jubilee opposed me seriously on that we wanted to increase more money to the counties, more powers to the counties to work. And I did give my the party position to the BBI team, and I saw in their report that they had captured quite a bit, and I'm still pushing for more to be captured for the benefit of Kenyans, not for the benefit of Chama Shinani. Now, when I'm asked to participate, I have every reason to participate. I can't go outside and start crying if there's an opportunity to do so. But I also want to make it clear to Cherargei that I have not joined Jubilee. I am not a member of Jubilee. We are Chama Shinani, and we are cooperating with Jubilee on the issues that were put down on paper. And any other issues will be on a case-by-case basis. So I would like Cherargei to clearly understand that I am neither a member of Jubilee or Jubilee Asili, or is it Foda Asili or something Asili, whatever it is.
Governor, I want
Asili,
to interject there a bit. I want to interject there a little. How does your action of cooperation or coalition with going into coalition with Jubilee help to strengthen the democracy, multi-party democracy?
If
for people
we
who don't
are able,
understand.
one thing is political parties can coalesce. That is a fact of multi-party politics. Kenya shall be a multi-party democracy, not a monolith like Cherares corner was pushing a year ago. And now that they have realized they are in a corner, they want to split it again into another tribal outfit. Now, what I really wish to put across to you is that, look, it helps multi-party politics by the fact that it should be understood by Kenyans that political parties are not simply formed to grandstand against an existing government. In certain policy decisions, they can agree together and work to achieve it. We want to work to achieve cohesion. We want to move to achieve electoral justice. We want to move to achieve inclusivity. We want to move to achieve a number of those issues that were listed in that handshake.
But I want to make Governor, it clear. Governor, still, let me still not clear out to me. You cannot do this outside, or must everybody be in the house to do it? Or are you not heard when you are outside? Or shouldn't we be encouraging everybody being heard, being outside?
That's a good question.
Yes, they are encouraged. But when they refuse to come to the table to discuss those issues, you can't force them. You persuade them. We were not forced as Chama cha Mashinani. In fact, we have been invited throughout for the last 2 years. And we've been invited to come on board. Even Cherargei, I don't know, I think his colleagues came here to persuade me to work with the Jubilee the other year. And this is simply a progression of a discussion that has been ongoing since 2017. But I have flatly rejected the possibility of Chama cha Mashinani folding. We can only discuss on issues that are important to Kenyans. And I can see there are a number of issues that are important to Kenyans right now. One of them is that of cohesion, maintaining peace, and electoral justice, making sure that elections are held properly. And I'm happy that Madam Martha Karua has a lot of democracy in her party. Although we didn't see a lot of it when she was Minister for Justice. She appointed the entire electoral body on her own and told us to shut up. Even Moi was much better. He invited the opposition to give their nominees. When she was Minister for Justice, she didn't do that very well. And I'm saying this because we are about 7 of us listening. So I can't say this outside this particular forum. My great sister, Mother.
All right, understood. Now, back to Barak, then we'll come round for the final parting shot. Barak,
no, you have to allow me to respond.
I'll come back to you, Mheshimiwa. You'll have the final word on that. You will definitely.
Yeah, because when people lose arguments, they go to a prominent.
All right, okay.
I will also be given a 1 minute.
Order, I'll come to you, Cherargei.
And mine,
I'm with Barak.
2 minutes.
Barak, one of the things that concerns the movement towards reviewing the Constitution is with regard to how far we are amending the Constitution and to what extent are we achieving any change or movement forward. And one of the biggest concerns has been the level of representation in our democracy that we created with the new Constitution. Hundreds of representatives eating on the public pass. What is your view going forward in terms of managing the cost of our Constitution or our governance? And are you supporting the retention of all these positions and the structure of representation as it is between Senate, National Assembly, and all these institutions that we have?
Okay, that question is contextualized in what you asked Honorable Martha Karua about whether she was seeing a constitutional moment or not. And the answer really is that a lot of these things which my good brother, Governor Isaac Ruto is talking about are things that can be done without, number one, going into Jubilee, leaving our spaces and going into Jubilee, because we all have got the opportunity, the scope and the space to participate. that we can talk about inclusivity, electoral justice, about cohesion, about peace, without going into jubilee, without scrambling for space in government. Now, when we look at more frontally the question you ask about representation, we are obviously overrepresented. We are a small country with a very small budget. Our national gross product is Mickey Mouse compared to very huge, massive countries. If you look at our country, Kenya here, we are just slightly smaller, for example, than the state of Texas in the United States, and which has a GDP that is about 100 times ours. And you do not see it having the kind of representation that we have in the country today. This is our notion of bringing everybody on board, that we want to parcel out the country into as many dockets as possible, legislative nature and others, and say that we are now being inclusive. If you ask me, I would say that if there's any reform that we needed to make, it would perhaps be to even cut down the number of legislative areas. There is nothing very useful they are doing apart from bloating the wage bill, that indeed even the wage bill itself, or what it is that legislators and other public servants are paid, we need to bring it down, because we have made it now to look so, to be so heavy that it is the incentive. People don't go to parliament, for example, with the objective of legislating, with the objective of serving the country. They go there looking at the goodies. And that is why they are able to be humiliated the way they are being humiliated today. And not a single person can stand up to the executive to tell the executive that there you are wrong. It is because they are looking at the packings, the pay packs, the parquicides, so to say. And because of that, democracy itself is miscarried.
All right, I'll of course give you the final opportunity. Let me ask Kabala, you've been there, Michael Orwa, Betty, you've been listening in. You might have something to say before I go to Charangay. Question, observation?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, thank you very much. This has been a very, very progressive conversation, and I believe we need to have such more frequently. I just want to throw in a question within the context of strengthening multi-party democracy in Kenya. Perhaps the speakers could talk to the role of financing of political parties in terms of strengthening them. Thank you.
All right, that I'll reserve for the final take. Michael?
Thank you, David. Wonderful conversation. I look at the clock and it seems that it passed us as we were really engrossed in this great conversation. Governor Isaac Ruto is somebody I've looked up to in terms of serious defense of constitution and particularly what I call devolution. I think as a chair of COG, I am yet to see a governor who has really stood for devolution the way he did. So it was quite interesting to hear his critique of devolution, or in the way I think it has been implemented. So my contribution would be in terms of three things. One, I think there are a couple of things that have been pointed out by panelists. One is around the mischief around the constitutional moment. And I think the president is intentionally mischievous in misappropriating the term, the idea of a constitutional moment for very unconstitutional things that are heading our way. I think, like Honorable Martha has pointed out, if there were truly a constitutional moment, we would be rallying this country towards faithful implementation of the Constitution of Kenya 2010 in its full integrity. We have a president under a ruling party that is on record has been found by the courts of law, competent courts of law, to have violated the law. the president, not once, not twice, to have actually either received and implemented bad advice or has chosen only the worst of advice to implement the constitution. So I think the constitutional moment we should be speaking about is about implementing the constitution and securing the promise of the Constitution of Kenya 2010. We need to reclaim it. And I think the role of political parties in fighting at the onslaught of muzzling the multi-party space is particularly important. It is particularly important because the civil society has been beaten to a pulp since 2013, which seems to have been a Jubilee manifesto, and they have fairly succeeded. So if you look at the current political situation in the country, the civil society is on its knees, and I think there is need to revive, to regroup, to reorganize. I think parliament has been completely emasculated, whether it is threats, it's not through persuasion, and we also have a judiciary that is either ignored or beaten to a pulp, but more importantly, we have an official opposition that has abdicated its duty. Now, we stand in a very dangerous moment where the official opposition is running government and disrupting government, and we have a vacuum. And I think the challenge for us and all the progressive forces in the country right now is to understand the moment we stand on, to mobilize a team of rivals, if it must be, to actually reclaim this country from the precipice, because the situation we have requires sacrifice and not necessarily compromise. That is what is facing this country today. Finally, I would want to say a lot of people have spoken about why Jubilee. I think it is important as political parties, as Kenyans, that we are bothered and we speak to what is happening within Jubilee. Why? And it does not amount to interference in internal affairs of political parties. Number one, Jubilee is funded by public resources, like one other or two parties. So therefore, we are stakeholders, irrespective of which party we belong to. So those are public resources, the billions they receive. Number two, it is the government in power, which means we must hold them accountable, because the Jubilee problems often translate into national problems, as we can see. This country is currently facing a crisis that is being forced on us, which is an internal crisis. And on that ground alone, we have an obligation to speak and hold the party accountable. Finally, it is the ruling party. The character of the ruling party manifests the character of the state at local, regional, and international space. So if we have a dysfunctional political party, we have a dysfunctional government, and therefore our image in international space is also compromised. So in that sense, the business of Jubilee is the business of every Kenyan. Finally, on BBI, my party leader called it Breaking Bridges Initiative. And I think I would want to reiterate that despite the fact that this country does not have enough examples of parties as institutions, NAC Kenya has stood the test of time. We have never closed our door. We have a small secretariat. We have a verifiable physical address that has not shifted. And I think these are small things when we talk about institutionalizing political parties at a moment and in a country where we have the highest mortality of political parties. The party that won 2002 did not contest presidency in its form in 2007. The one that won in 2007 did not contest in 2003 and 13. The one that won in 2013 did not in the same vein contest in the same identity as 20. So how do we build resilient political parties? It starts within political parties. We cannot have a situation where we are told about BBI and there's nothing, no single agenda in BBI that has not been addressed by the Constitution of Kenya 2010. They have not built a case for BBI. Okay. Therefore, we must build a case against BBI. Thank you.
All right, Michael.
Ali, may I please come in, because my phone is running out of power and we suffered whatever. Yes. I just wanted to reply to my good friend Isaac Ruto in a very brief manner. To remember, he was in KANU in 1997 when we had the IPPG. KANU mischievously removed the amendment that would have made it mandatory to consult opposition parties when forming the Electoral Commission. Therefore, there was no law requiring President Kibaki to give any slots to anyone. He chose to exercise his power to nominate the electoral commissioners. I was his minister, therefore his spokesperson on that matter. And what we did was legitimate. KANU should blame itself, including Isaac Ruto, for having not entrenched it in the constitution, thinking they were going to be in government forever. Having said that, I want to quickly say, even when we nominated members of the Electoral Commission in 1997 after IPPG, KANU still managed to steal the elections because the victory that year belonged to Mwai Kibaki, although he would not have had enough members of parliament. So nominating commissioners is not the gateway to a free and fair election. Let's entertain that dialogue without blame game. And I'm disappointed that Isaac Ruto has joined the ranks who, when they run out of argument, go to ad hominem, what shall I say, ad hominem issues. And I want also to say there's a question asked by Betty Adera on financing. I call her Madam President. She was in that contest of Madam President. I want to tell her that financing is very important, and I'm challenging CMD to convene a meeting on party financing only. What I have learned in other democracies, where there is devolution, party funding, and I learned this from Germany early this year, party funding is also devolved. For instance, we should be having 60% of the political parties fund divided at the national level to parties that have won national seats. At the county, 40% is divided to parties on a pro rata basis in each county. If that was the case, NARC Kenya would be the official opposition in Kirinyaga. The Kirinyaga government will be a party that is playing its role. This is indeed a very serious question. Apart from mobilizing Kenyans to join parties and to fund them, let us think also of the public coffer funding, which should be not for rewarding parties, but for growing democracy in the country. I want to say thank you. Should my battery run out of power, I will exit before time, but otherwise I'll sit and listen to everybody.
Martha Karua, Mheshimiwa, I want to pose one before, and this is your final take, then we go around, everyone giving us their final parting shot. On the matter of a good democracy, all the three arms, the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary need to be functional. Clearly, we have issues across all those, and additionally, and this is something that Senator Cherargei should put in mind, the Electoral Management Body, IBC, it seems to be missing in all this, yet it's at the center of the whole democratic project. What are your thoughts about one, IBC, and two, any radical proposals, if any, that would strengthen the stability of our democracy in those three arms?
The IBC, I've got a very quick suggestion that party leadership and executive have to sit together, and I keep hoping that CMD will soon convene us. The problem we have with elections, you can keep forming new IBCs every season, but they'll be contaminated by the political players. It is candidates, political parties, and their supporters who hire IBC officials and commissioners to foul the elections. We have to face each other, see how to manage elections, and how to police each other so that we do not foul the elections. And one way is devolving the management of elections to the counties, where we hire those who go for elections together. We form committees. We have a national committee that gives the policy and direction, which is then implemented by the players at the county level. Those are not things we can discuss fully, but we must face each other and discuss electoral justice very quickly later this year, before the Jotoya elections kuanza. What else had you asked me, Makali?
About the three arms, the other arms that seem to be failing in stabilizing our democracy, the legislature and the judiciary.
Judiciary did very well in annulling the presidential election because they demonstrated courage and decisional independence. But thereafter, I do not know which string was pulled. They have given contradictory decisions on the same matter, noting that the 6 elections were identical and simultaneously held, and on many other national issues. And therefore, I was saying that the judiciary has to re-examine itself. The disrespect it's facing from the executive and parliament, part of it is self-inflicted. That doesn't make it right. We therefore need to sit down and discuss these things and the way forward. But we cannot do without a judiciary. We cannot do without parliament. Parliament has surrendered itself to the executive. We need to sit and discuss these things. The only right thing BBI said, let us have a national conversation. Anything else, that is selfish and self-serving.
All right, thank you.
And
Senator
I thank you
Charage.
for this opportunity to participate and for everybody's contribution.
Thank you, Alias Lanet. Senator Charage, you had the opportunity one, which I didn't serve you, but now I want to give you a little more, and then I go to the final contributions by both Barak and Governor Ruto. Especially Senator Charage, because you've been the chair of the JLAC in Senate. And these matters of establishing and securing our electoral processes and therefore strengthening our democracy were right in your court. And the IBC still looks the way it looked after the elections, contestations, nothing has been done. Were you waiting for the signal?
Like Malema said, Mama, we are waiting for you to give the signal.
Exactly.
David, what I would want to say, maybe on two issues, you asked something about constitutional moment. I think my party leader, the president, is mischievous. His constitutional moment is not in good faith, and we know what his intentions are. He wants to cling to power. Secondly, on IBC reforms, where I was the chairman, JLAC, one interesting thing when I chaired JLAC, there were so many amendments, many piecemeal amendments towards the IEBC Act and the Elections Act. In fact, by the time I was exiting the chairmanship of JLAC, I had prepared a list, or I had prepared something, a takeaway for the Senate to look at the issues of reforms to the IBC and to the Elections Act in an omnibus manner. And I remember my counterpart, who has also been moved, Mheshimiwa Cheptumo, we had come up with a one synchronized way of ensuring that we address the issues of amendments towards the IEBC Act and Elections Act. Number three, on why we did not do any propose for any reforms within the IEBC. You remember the IEBC itself breathes and works, and the politics of the day affects, because as a chair, we really tried, and we engaged the IEBC. You remember the chairman of IBC, which copied the letter to me, Chairman Jebukati, at one point wrote to the president that he needs to fill up the positions that were left by the commissioners of Kurgat, Rosaline, among others. And therefore, we really tried our best. I tried to bring to the attention of the Senate and even the Parliament. But David, with the lack of political goodwill from both party leaders, be it the NASA coalition, and I'm happy Barack Muluka is here with us, and at the ODM, we tried to talk to other political players, but they were not keen in, mark the word keen, they were not keen in reforming or reconstituting the IEBC as of now. Because the question we asked at that point, for example, if we were to go to a popular initiative or where we are going for constitutional referendum, who will conduct the referendum? Yet the same BBI report has proposed reconstitution of the IEBC, not to do referendum or any other elections the way it is constituted. Those were very serious issues that were being raised at that point. We made a report on the issue. We met at the floor of the House of the Senate. These reports have been brought to the attention, but David and the fellow panelists, the biggest challenge we faced was lack of political goodwill from my party leader, from the party leaders in the ANC and other political party leaders within the parliamentary structure. But I want to say we cannot reform the IBC or reconstitute without the key players within the political landscape, and that is the politicians. And in fact, by the way, as I conclude on that part, we had reached even a point where people are saying, in fact, I remember Mheshimiwa Kaluma was saying, now let us agree that political parties nominate the commissioners. Those were some of the proposals I received in my committee. People were just saying, let political parties the way they are, give us the commissioners, like the IPPG agreement of 1997. So they wanted to mirror, but where I said, And I hope the next chair, of course, there is no new chair of JLAC in the Senate at the moment. I hope we will pick it from where we were so that
But
we can
what is
reform.
your preference? What is your preference in a nutshell, not taking more than a minute? What is your preference and what was the consensus going forward on the matter of the IBC?
My
in terms of its
preference was,
formation, composition, and securing it from manipulation?
in fact, our worry, as I say, that is that we were worried that there could be political interference. My preference at that point is that we needed to up the threshold of putting commissioners in office and ensuring that we give them more insulation from direct political interference. And I think that was my preference, and that we should escape from direct influence or nomination by.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Governor Ruto. On all those matters of the constitutional moment, on your parting shot on the matter of the constitutional moment, you hear me?
Yes,
and
yes.
the essence of the three arms of government working, functioning, and your party has been totally mute on the matters in the public domain, whether it is the judiciary, whether it's the emasculation of the executive, of the legislature. You don't have a mouth.
Am I unmuted? Are you hearing me?
Yes, I can hear you.
You are hearing me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to state that you can't. You've leveled very heavy accusations on the questions of being mute. I don't know who may have muted us, but we have actually been continuing with our concern about reforms. And we would like, first of all, where we are coming from is that we want, first of all, to push for stronger devolution. And the type of parliament we achieved is what we asked for. We did oppose this type of parliament. We opposed this type of executive. And we thought maybe because the majority took it, maybe we thought they were right. We wanted to listen, watch, observe, and let Kenyans also form an opinion as to what sort of parliament this is. The type of parliament we have crafted is unlikely to be any better unless we entirely reform it. And I'm happy, and I normally like the fact that Mother Karua, although sometimes she refuses to get along, has got great ideas. She's talking about devolving even issues to do with political party management. I think this is a moment for constitutional change. I have asked for this since 2013, that we really need to look at afresh. We need to look afresh at the 2010 constitution, insofar as the executive operates, insofar as parliament operates. We even have a Senate. And we are glad to have people like Cherargea who are quite eloquent in their minds. But our Senate is not recognized as an upper house. In fact, it is a lower house in practice. It cannot pass certain bills, including those on money bills. There are so many things. It cannot even originate legislation. It cannot even vet. And the real work of a Senate is what was left out in the 2010 Constitution. I would like to see a Senate that is an upper house. I would like to see a parliament that has the leaders of those parties present in that house and with very clear agenda so that they are capable of holding government in check. As of now, what my good friend Cherargea is trying to put to the fore now is what he failed to do until he got out of JLAC. He is now discovering that there were problems. And what he's trying to make into national problems are party problems. They need to sort out, put their house in order in the first place. What we need ourselves at the national plane is that we do not need an imperial presidency. We do not require cabinet secretaries who are appointees or who are just civil servants, permanent secretaries. There can be no lively debate. I'm happy to note that Karua is saying, Mother Karua is saying, she was quite independent inside the Kibaki's government. How many CSS can tell us that? We are the ones who have kept saying that members of the cabinet should not participate in politics. I don't know why we are saying that as a young country. We can't afford that type of silence. And indeed, when these cabinet secretaries come to our quarter, even MCAs attract bigger crowds. No one notices who they are. We don't know what they stand for. We don't even know what they are about to do and what they didn't do. There are some names we don't even know. We've never seen the faces, and we don't know what they perform in their ministries. I'm of the view that the cabinet must be brought back to Raya. The president must be tied to Raya. I'm willing to let the president handle state duties only, and only given certain portfolios like that of foreign affairs, that of internal security, commander-in-chief of the armed forces, maybe lands and environment. But kazi, utendaji wa kazi, mambo ya barabara, mambo ya maji, mambo ya all those other things that need to be delivered to the public must be under the office of the Prime Minister. And the Prime Minister must be able to answer questions in Parliament every Thursday. If the Prime Minister was in Parliament, and I'm just hearing Cherargea now, he has never said anything about Embomut. He has never said anything about the misuse of funds in all the dams that we've seen. And what we are asking is, if the Prime Minister... Sorry, I must apologize if I have
Governor, you provoked further conversation.
But the point I'm putting across here is, if the Prime Minister as head of government...
No, Senator, I will not allow it. I think it's fine. Right. He just mentioned as a matter of
yeah,
you know.
I must apologize for what I'm apologizing for to Honorable Cherargea. But the point here is this, that if the Prime Minister reposts in Parliament and would answer questions every Thursday, and cabinet secretaries would be answering questions on Tuesday and Wednesday, these scandals would not be there. Corruption would be eliminated on the floor of the House. As of now, we don't know what they do in committees. My friend Cherargea would meet in committees, and we would hear about certain envelopes exchanging hands inside those committees. And we don't know the truth or otherwise of the same. We would like to see you answering questions on national televisions. We would like to see the cabinet secretaries answering questions on the floor of the House. And showing us their competence or lack of it.
All right, Governor.
Chair, I think this is the moment for Kenyans to do constitutional changes. And I'm going to be very vocal on that. I was just waiting for the moment. I would like to get more members. Remember, I talked too much between 2013 and 2017. And maybe people thought the constitution belonged to Isaac Ruto. Now you are saying it belongs to Uhuru Kenyatta. Now I don't understand. We are talking about a constitution that belongs to all Kenyans, including Mother Karua and Cherargea, and should not wait only until he is no longer chair of JLAC, and then he starts crying.
Thank you, Governor. Now I think we will hear from Barack Muluka on whether he sees a constitutional moment and the role of political parties in addressing or ensuring that all the three arms of government are working, and that the electoral process and contests are fair by having an independent and reliable IEBC.
Thank you very much, David. I'd also like, since I'm making my final remarks today, to thank my fellow panelists for a very good and healthy debate, as well as all the others who have participated. Coming back to the question of the constitutional moment, I don't know what the question is, because the question has not been framed. The issues have not been processed, and eventually realized what we could call a substantive question that we could then talk about. You have had Kenyans talking about, and I've listened to Isaac enumerate a number of things, and these are things which can be dealt with the law the way it is. The problem with this country has not been that we do not have enough laws. In fact, sometimes I think that We have far too many laws. Our problem is that we do not obey the laws. Mheshimiwa Martha Karua spoke of the number of times when the president himself has been found to be in a breach of the law. When the executive holds the law in contempt, when cabinet secretaries are invited to appear before the various parliamentary committees, as is enunciated in the law, and they defy that with impunity, then you don't start telling us that we need more laws, because the laws are already there. And we have seen Dr. Fred Matiang'i appearing before parliamentary committees and lecturing them, reading to them the Riot Act, and going away almost crowing like a peacock. You see, that is the big challenge that we have in the country, that the law does not apply equally to everybody all the time in every space. That when we look at devolution, the question of how much funding should go to the devolved units in the country, it's been stated very clearly that funds will follow functions. When Isaac Ruto was the governor of the governor for Bomet and the chair of the Council of Governors, this was what got him into trouble with the executive, because he kept saying, and rightfully so, that funds were not following functions. You look at the Ministry of Health, the portfolio is still the same as it was at the headquarters in 2012, before devolution started being effected in 2013. We have even seen the headquarters, Afia House, going out to procure health facilities for devolved government, and we have seen some of that rotting at the coast in Mombasa, and it is something that we have accepted. We know now for sure that it was a matter of some people awarding themselves the tenders to procure, awarding tenders to their families, and they've gotten away with it. We have seen the leased equipment in county hospitals that is lying fallow. Nobody has ever used them. So it's not a question of whether we have enough laws or we don't have enough laws. We have seen situations where court orders are disobeyed with impunity. Where have they said that the Minister for Interior will not obey court orders? Where have they said that the president will not obey court orders? Where have they said about inclusivity that the president will only appoint people from his tribe? That when President Uhuru Kenyatta makes 6 appointments, 5 of them will be from his tribe, and 1 token one will be given to another tribe. The constitution is very clear.
Barak,
Yes.
the question is, what are you as a party or parties doing in addressing those issues? Aggressively.
They have no idea.
Aggressively, our role is to tell the government that you are digressing from the law as laid out. And it doesn't matter that you give us more and more layers of laws. It's going to be a waste of public funds, public resources, making more laws that you're not going to respect. That when we talk about the bloodletting that we see during electoral times, it's not because the laws are not there, it's because the laws are not being followed. And we have seen Jubilee carrying the IEBC in the lap, almost as if IEBC was a lapdog. That when the political opposition was raising issues in 2017 about IEBC, it was not IEBC which was speaking for itself. It was the people in power in Jubilee who would come out to defend the IEBC because of what they wanted to use it for. So that eventually these things that we are talking about, they are about Chapter 6, they are about Article 10, they are about the implementation of the 2/3 gender principle, which those who are in power have the capacity to implement, to address, but they have refused. It doesn't matter that we come up with new laws. So finally, my good brother Isaac will remember when we used to pray together at the University of Nairobi. We were taught that, yes, all have sinned and fallen short of the grace of God. But we were also reminded that some sins are mortal and others are venial. A mortal sin is like living your democratic space as Chama cha Mapinduzi, cha mashinani, this Chama cha Mapinduzi or mashinani, Chama cha mashinani, where you can express yourself freely and help us to expand the democratic space, where you can help us to hold the Jubilee government to account. And now you are going there to help to mold an imperial presidency where the law precludes it. I think that is a mortal sin, my brother Isaac.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I can see that you know, every final speaker is dropping gauntlet to the other one and almost reviving the conversation and discussion. But we have to come to a conclusion of this very interesting conversation. I know I see there are questions that are still pending. One, for example, but I not ask you to answer it, Charalgay. So what next? You know, that's the question that is pending. To Honorable Martha Karua, why not form a coalition of like-minded parties with the same principles and same ethics and hygiene in the political parties and cause a change in the country? That is work, homework. And to to Governor Honorable Ruto, a very interesting question. When did you convene the national delegates or party organs of your party to decide to cooperate or move into Jubilee in the manner you have done? You know, these are still questions that are prodding. Probably will not be answered today. Maybe there'll be questions for the next session that we may handle, if at all. I know you are itching to respond, but I will not allow you. Thank you all. Thank you all for the opportunity and for your very, very incisive contributions and discussions, and all the people who joined us online by audio or on video who have been with us. I just want to send this back to Executive Director Michael Kwanja. I saw there was a poll, which is very interesting. Maybe you should talk about that, Frank, as we conclude. And for me, thank you very much, everybody. It was an exciting conversation.
Thank you for great moderation.
Asante sana, Martha.
Frank, we can't hear you.
Yes, can't hear.
Frank, unmute.
What happened?
No, you've muted yourself.
He is actually unmuted, but I can't hear him.
No.
Yes, Mosh.
No. No.
Volume, Franklin. Remove your earphone.
No.
Plug it in. Plug it in properly.
Frank, you can come here. Let me give this to Frank to tie up the conversation.
Sorry, gentlemen, technology has let me down on the other end, but I want to thank you very much, David, for great moderation and the panelists for the very great discussion. We agree that the weakest link in our democratic development chain is political parties, and therefore it is important that we have this discussion. I have had very insightful conversations. The only surest route to good governance, to the rule of law, constitutionalism, inclusion, you know, all these good things that we're yearning for. It's about us working hard to institutionalize our political parties. So all these questions, all these conversations are not in vain. And I hope that all these discussions can continue. I have had your requests on a number of areas that we as CMD and you as member political parties would like us to focus on. And as I said earlier, thank you very much, NAC Kenya, for putting in a lot of thinking on this conversation. And we invite all the parties, KANU, DP, Chama cha Mashinani, you know, Jubilee, ANC, when you have these ideas that you think cannot be prosecuted at an internal or party level, please, this is why CMD exists. Let us explore these ideas together. Let us have a conversation that can move this country forward. Let us strengthen the weakest link in our democratic development chain.
once again, I want to thank you very much, all of you, for the wonderful conversation. And we look forward again to inviting you to more conversations and moving this country to the next level in terms of development. Thank you very much, and have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Yes, Cherargei, you can stay a little longer. What happened? Where is Cherargei of Tangatanga to Podasili? Does it disappear?
Bas. No. Ako po tazi, let's do it. Who po tazi dito mo ni? Then. Ako mo ibunin yon. Mo ibunin po tazi dito ko ibunin. Yes, come on. Go on, mo niya mo ba tawo. Chama ya tawo. Ay ba, tawo mo binga na. Ay ni ya. O si ijoruwe. Ya. Mami be. Dapat ko mele ni na isa jama te daga. Jogi nama na mele na do jama te daga. Di jogi saude. Where are you all day? Hey, we no go you the don't die, Jenny. Really, what are you see do? Kakaran? Even the internet was there on the TV. And I was shooting a bit. Okay, ay so kwam ne me maya na ne so hamache yerga sine to se tai kunyo na ke ba ke igat ke cho so el mure ella mun ni te gore duale out ai go e no ni ne o jura ai duale kaja si ya mama yake wewe kutaka wagasagi te ya ukile yao ngala bidu kabisa gore ki inge ni lagi mato ni ni ngala lu bijota uwa kwa sawa bi ka ke twala mu ya go de ni ting ngala onde ko fa inu ichege na to ko mi mambira la kenya ni ma to mi dira la kenya to ko no mo ni ju ga gi na mo ni de o ma to no mo ni ni ma ko na oh ya mo ni ya ma ta ke bo an ni ma ti ko ti ko ti Abano bijurano. Wale na wafanye chochote.
Kale ng'om bendi ka. Wewe ndio si wewe ndio kwani unawacha watu waende? Kali aziko maji kwa moto, no? Watu wenye walikuwa naosha. Hapo yule msichana. Nani? I want you to see or you want them to watch completely.
Ada tulikuwa tunataka tuweke mashine.
Yeah.
Ati kuna wanasema.
Nani nasema? No, kali hapo tu ndio kama. Kani kono lo yangu kama ndugu wewe nini kujeni hapa. Naita watu wengine na mubebe. Ati release people. Bro nani? Bro. Soko. Yeah. Let watu wa maybe you these fellows are supposed to work. Hata kama ni usiku. Sio waende. Ile rabibu ndio yapaka nini? So wewe ngaeni hiyo. Anya ndio ndio institute utawa. Afanye kazi. Bro langat ni kwa power. Ogo la kwani kwa unse ndio arudi hapa maliza. Ogo la kwana tayari. Kuja maliza hapa. She is supposed to move the place kama hakuna chafu. You see, tangi hapo sema
inafanyika saa hii. Alafu pesa asubuhi. Kwa wasema anaendelea kula
no, why does it go? Unakubalia watu ambao wanaishi across the fence kwenda kunani na wewe mtu akiamua ndio nadhani wananga kazi hello kabe yapi kama name kama ndo bado couldn't let it. Yeah. 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 Tahu nggak ada? kujeni. Leteni hiyo.
Okay, okay.